I feel myself soften. Feel my heart unfurl like a new leaf in spring. Feel how possible it is to be generous with the humanness of myself and others, and oh, the relief it brings. In that moment, it is easy to be alive. How truly I want to walk it, this path of compassion. Thank you for that beautiful reading, Carol, from earlier. Oh gosh, compassion changes everything, doesn't it? It pulls us out of the kind of tight containers that we can so easily stow ourselves away in. Because compassion gets us into the heart of another. Activist priest Father Gregory Boyle calls this true kinship, the place where we remember that we really do belong to each other. The world becomes really big when you feel that. Forget it for those little fleeting sweet moments. And so does your heart. It feels bigger. Maybe that's that relief feeling. I don't know. I like to think about it like where we're summoning God-sized love, like big, like universes and galaxies big. One that is without measure and without regret, and it isn't stingy and it isn't conditional. It isn't so afraid either. I can feel so afraid. Where rather the heart unfurls and softens, and that glorious relief comes, this path of compassion, kinship. I would say that God, whom many of us call love, and we have a lot of other names for God around here, can get really tiny if we aren't careful. We've got to be careful. It's a dangerous path to go about life and relationship only offering compassion and love to those you deem deserve it. When we do this, we unintentionally begin mirroring, I think, pretty bad, small-minded theology. I think some of you know about this kind of small God and theology. Some of you were indoctrinated into it as young children and have never fully recovered, and for that I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Small-minded God and theology. This is the God in some of our so-called holy houses who punishes and judges, believes we were born inherently bad, sorts people into categories of good and evil, demands a one-size-fits-all kind of purity, and turns their back on anyone who doesn't fit into it. What a misdirected vision of God. It breaks my heart. And as a result, we have for thousands of years, I don't have to tell you this, seen some of the most religious and pious people in our world being more practiced at hating than loving. Because that is what their God has modeled for them, hate. Franciscan priest Richard Rohr says that when God becomes a shaming figure, we learn to pass that shame on to others. That being taught to hate and fear one another, including ourselves, has come at a huge cost, he says, to history and to humanity. Huge. I want to be very clear, this is not the God I invoke in our sanctuary. This is not the God we believe in as Unitarian Universalists. I don't believe in that God either. And listen to me, most of the world's Christians don't either. Sadly, hate just has a louder megaphone, so we've gotten a bit confused about this. Unitarian Universalists believe, and have for hundreds and hundreds of years, they believe in a holy, compassionate, and loving God, called by so many names, no names, who shows up in a variety of wild and wondrous ways, often in our relationships with one another, right? Kinship. And is all about love, forgiveness, compassion. And we've focused on this theme of compassion this month. And we've thought a lot about how we might be better bearers of it in the world, what God has to teach us about that. Chaplain Sherry helped us with this at the beginning of the month. What a blessing she was. And last week, Kyle brought the wonderful Reverend Howard Thurman into the fold, a titan of compassion. And we've reflected on how the sacred earth teaches us about this too. And I think it's been a really rich and good theme. Compassion. I hope we don't end the month and do away with it. It stays with us. But there is one question that I haven't asked you yet. How do you do with compassion when it comes to you? I'm not talking about extending compassion out right now. How do you do with turning it inward? While many Unitarian Universalists understand compassion, equity, kindness to be essential in our interactions with others, or at least is what we're trying for, wrestling with, we don't always see these as core values for our relationship with ourselves. It took me almost a year after our new UU shared values were voted into being to move my finger around that flowery little intersecting wheel and point them at myself. Try it. Do any of you know the golden rule? Yeah. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. These are the words of Jesus, a man of immeasurable compassion. And implicit in Jesus' commandment, which he calls the greatest commandment of all, to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Implicit is the assumption that we're supposed to love ourselves, that we would know how to love our neighbors because we're already well practiced at loving ourselves, that we're supposed to, and is mandated by God, to be kind and gentle, caring and nurturing, compassionate and forgiving of ourselves. And that if we're unable to do this, we might be unable to do it for our neighbors. We might struggle. And the golden rule is so compelling that there seems to be some version of it in nearly every major religion and across world cultures. Self-compassion, love and acceptance of self, the way I see it, it is life's masterclass. Yeah. Because you got to wade through a lot of sick and cruel programming to get to it. Programming about how you should look, what beauty is. Yeah. How you should feel. What you should be able to do, what you should be able to take or weather Our culture has taken on eerily similar attributes as that punitive God who has us beating ourselves up most days for not meeting some ridiculous, impossible expectation of goodness, lovability, and success. And worse, we have been told that it's selfish or some kind of privilege that we should feel badly about to prioritize our body and soul's deepest needs. To proclaim love for oneself is to be what? An egomaniac or a narcissist these days? And let me make this real clear, and I know many of you know this oh too well. Egomaniacs and narcissists are not operating out of a place of self-love and self-compassion. Quite the opposite. Okay? And this worn-out, soul-snuffing dogma has been so indoctrinated into us that many of us don't even know where to start where it comes to real self-compassion and love, and we really don't even notice when we start speaking to ourselves in ways that are utterly inhumane or about ourselves. This has become so internalized in us that our harshest critic, judge, caretaker, boss, mean old God is ourselves. It's ourselves. I like to think about, would we speak to a child the same way we speak to ourselves? Would we ever want to burden others with these excessive responsibilities or use demeaning language to describe how they look, or when they make a mistake, demanding they neglect their health or telling them they're a failure or for being unwell at all? And yet this is the playlist for most of us without question, and that we live with most of the time. I certainly am very familiar with it. Some of the wisest, hardest teachings I have received, I'm going to offer you two of them. I've brought these into worship before. Some of you have heard me talk about them before when we've met. Note that I say some of the hardest teachings. Okay, the first one comes from Episcopal priest and prolific writer and teacher Barbara Brown Taylor, who writes this: whether you are sick or well, lovely or irregular, there comes a time when it is vitally important for your spiritual health to drop your clothes, look in the mirror, and say, "Here I am. This is the body like no other that has shaped my life and that my life has shaped. I live here. This is my soul's address." When I do this, she writes, I generally decide that it is time to do a better job of wearing my skin with gratitude instead of loathing. And the second, from Zen master Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who believes self-compassion is the bedrock from which to live, taught me to notice that when I am suffering, when I have missed the mark, when the playlist gets going, that's suffering, to put my hand to my face like this, as you would hold a child's face, and say to myself, "My darling, I care about your suffering." And to do that often, and try doing it in the mirror too. There's that mirror again. There are so many teachings like these in the Christian tradition, the Jewish tradition, the Buddhist tradition, the Hindu tradition, Islam, Sufi traditions, indigenous traditions, Unitarian-Universalist traditions. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And listen, If these kinds of practices sound hard to you, or really embarrassing, or impossible, I promise you, you are not alone. Right now, you are sitting next to people that literally want to curl up at the ball of standing naked in front of a mirror. All right? Okay, so let's get it out of the way. And your embarrassment or your wanting to recoil is great information. It's just information. It means you might be getting a hint about where you need some healing and help. Many of you are looking for spiritual practices or ways to more fully live your faith and draw meaning from your lives, to find peace for yourselves. Maybe this is a good starting place. All you need is a little courage, which is really the only thing that the spiritual life requires, is just a little courage. The great theologian Parker Palmer wrote a book he called A Hidden Wholeness, The Journey Toward an Undivided Life, in which he diagnoses the world's great ills to be a result of humans becoming separated from their souls. When we live for too long with that steady drip of self-criticism, we're expecting ourselves to do it all perfectly. And that self-loathing that sits on our shoulders. He says, quote, "We end up living divided lives, so far removed from the integrity that comes from being what you are. Human. This is Palmer speaking, I pay a steep price when I live a divided life, feeling fraudulent and anxious about being found out and depressed by the fact that I'm denying my own selfhood. And, he says, this is really important, and the people around me pay a price as well, for now they walk on ground made unstable by my dividedness. How can I affirm another's identity when I deny my own? How can I trust another's integrity when I defy my own? He asks. We can't go on this way. I don't want to go on this way. Compassion changes everything. And it's all we're going to do. It's all I'm just trying for it. For us, there is only the trying. That is not me speaking. I think it's T.S. Eliot. For us, there is only the trying. The rest is not our business. As Unitarian-Universalists, we believe every human being deserves to live an undivided life, deserves wholeness, not idealized perfection, but to have a whole, personal, unique, alive human experience in the bodies and identities we were born into without shame. That is what we believe. That is what we are fighting for, right? So many of you devote your lives to fighting for this, to loving the hell out of the world that makes people think otherwise. And, my friends, and this is my message to you today, fight for it for yourselves, too. Fight for it for yourselves as well. My heart needs to hear Rosemary Watola Traumer's wisdom teaching again. Thank you, Rosemary. Let's listen together. Sometimes when I catch myself judging someone else, a stranger or perhaps a beloved, I imagine my son and father watching me, not looking down from above. I imagine them looking out from inside me. I don't worry I am disappointing them. I feel certain they would be generous with me. See how human she is, they might say, loving me despite my humanness because of my humanness. And in that moment of imagining, I feel myself soften, feel my heart unfurl like a new leaf in spring, feel how possible it is to be generous with the humanness of myself and others, and the relief it brings. In that moment, she says, it is easy to be alive. And it is easy to notice my annoyance and be gentle with the self who gets annoyed. Easy to touch my palm to my heart and know it as the palm of my son, the palm of my father, reminding me how truly I want to walk it, this path of compassion. And I'll offer this closing prayer. Sweet and gentle friend, God, whose very name is compassion. We want to walk this path with you. We want to greet others and ourselves with, my darling, I care about your suffering. Here I am, here you are. We want to love our neighbors. We want to love ourselves. We want to get better at wearing our skin. And we want to forgive ourselves when we just can't get there. Spirit, we ask for healing for this world, and we ask for healing for within, so that we might live an undivided life, take our place in the revolution with heart and mercy and compassion as our guides and gifts, and play the part we were meant to play in making the ground on which the whole world walks stable and lasting and good. Love, hear our prayer this morning. Love, hear our prayer. And to that I say, amen.